Welcome, everyone. Big surprise. Netflix has officially announced its victory in the acquisition of Warner Brothers, which includes DC, everything Warner Brothers owns, Game of Thrones, House of Dragons, Harry Potter, and hundreds of other major film franchises. What's happening now is that they've begun discussing the finer details of the deal and what the final merged companies will look like. Just imagine James Gunn waking up, opening his Twitter account, and discovering what happened, just like the rest of us, because he, George R.R. Martin, and other major stakeholders who produced these shows and films weren't part of the deal. So, they found out just like the rest of us. They've already released an official statement and held a conference call to explain what they're going to do with HBO, like traditional channels and where these things are watched. What will happen to the streaming service HBO Max? What will happen to the future of all the TV shows and films that Warner Brothers was already working on, like James Gunn and the DCU, and all that stuff? Because, yes, it's embedded. That does affect it in a certain way, but not in the way that worries people. There are some ups and downs to this, but thankfully, Netflix has explained how it's handling the company itself and the embedded companies, so we know what's happening with all the big TV series and all the big movies we're getting ready to watch, and where we'll be watching them. The most important question is, how much will you pay to watch everything you've been trying to watch? Where will you find all of it? Obviously, this won't change any of the things that have been produced for weekly videos. All of that will still happen, but what will change is how you pay for streaming services and where you find certain things at different points in their life cycle. I know there are a lot of questions about whether any big names will be let go. There were a lot of questions about what would happen to James Gunn's DC films and series if someone else bought Warner Brothers. What would happen to all the Game of Thrones prequels? Don't worry, Netflix and people from both companies have already talked about this. Okay, we'll explain what they just said. This is Netflix's official statement this morning after winning the bid in the in-person meetings to merge the two companies. The actual talks about who will be laid off and who won't, and what the process will look like, have just begun. The statement read, "Today, Netflix, a Warner Brothers Discovery company, announced that it has entered into a definitive agreement to acquire Warner Brothers, meaning the actual acquisition process will begin, including its film and television studios, HBO Max, and HBO." There are some notes about how much they will actually pay the company. The final figure will be around $82.7 billion. For example, when Disney bought Fox, the amount was closer to around $7.072 billion, just to give you an idea. What do we have here? Buying an entire company, with its library of movies and TV shows, in this way is incredibly expensive. Then it said that the deal is actually expected to close, as anticipated after the previously announced spin-off of WBD's global networking division, their linear TV channels and all of the company's exploration divisions, into a new publicly traded company, now expected to be completed in the third quarter of 2026, which is when the acquisition is supposed to close. So, the point is that Netflix only wants the streaming business and the studios that produce TV shows and movies. It doesn't want the linear channels. So, Warner Brothers is spinning all of that into a separate company, which will happen next year. Netflix itself doesn't want to own actual linear TV channels. It only wants the streaming service. Then they go on to list all their big perks. This acquisition brings together two leading entertainment companies, combining Netflix's innovation, global reach, and best-in-class streaming service. They already have the best technology in their streaming service, like how to watch content by logging into the app. But their Achilles heel lies in the actual content, intellectual property rights, and this is one of the reasons they so desire Warner Brothers, given their vast catalog of intellectual property that Netflix currently lacks access to. They then talk about integrating Warner Brothers' century-long legacy of world-class storytelling, including beloved franchises, series, and films like The Big Bang Theory. Series such as The Sopranos, Game of Thrones, The Wizard of Oz, and other DC Universe titles like James Gunn will join Netflix's extensive catalog, which already includes Wednesday, Money Heist, Bridgerton, Adolescent, and Extraction. They've dubbed all their major series Stranger Things, offering an exceptional entertainment experience for audiences worldwide. Netflix CEO Ted Sarandos stated, "Our mission has always been to entertain the world by bringing together Warner Brothers' incredible library of series and films. From timeless classics like Casablanca and Citizen Kane, to beloved franchises like Harry Potter, Friends, and the Friends TV series,
release,
with
like
our
all
own
the DC
culturally
movies,
significant
DC
works
TV
like
shows, Game
Stranger
of Thrones
Things,
prequels, Harry
K-pop
Potter,
Demon
TV
Hunters,
show, all
and
that stuff.
Squid Game,
What's going to
we'll be
happen
able
to
to
the
do
super?
that even better. Together, we can give audiences more of what they love and help shape the next century of storytelling. There's some exaggeration in how they talk about how great this work will be for everyone. We don't need to read the whole manifesto. Most of them say it will be better for everyone. But the truth is, it will only be better for some people. We'll get to that later. There are some additional details about them merging HBO, HBO Max, and Warner Brothers content with Netflix. But during the conference call, they became much clearer about the specifics. So, we'll focus on that part of the conversation. What they did was, after releasing that statement, they held a longer conference call where people asked, "Okay, so what's this going to look like? What does this really mean? What will happen to all the TV series and movies that HBO Max is preparing to release? Like all the DC movies, their TV series, the Game of Thrones prequels, the Harry Potter series, and all that stuff. What will happen to Supergirl, Clayface, Batman 2, and Superman, the Man of Tomorrow? Interesting. No. One of the biggest fears people have if Netflix buys Warner Brothers is that all those movies will stop showing in theaters. Will they show Superman, the Man of Tomorrow in theaters for a week, and then it will be available on Netflix? Here's what Netflix has said about that. They claim they will continue to show all Warner Brothers movies in theaters that were already scheduled to be shown, but what they won't change is what they've already done with Netflix original films, such as Knives Out, Wake Up Dead Man, and Frankenstein. These films only had a very brief theatrical run before arriving on Netflix. Perhaps most importantly, and this is crucial, Netflix will maintain its HBO Max service and app, while periodically adding WB HBO content to Netflix. So, at some point, you'll watch Game of Thrones on Netflix, but everything currently in production, such as all the Game of Thrones prequels, all DC TV series, and the new Harry Potter series they're preparing for in 2027, will be available on the HBO Max streaming platform. Therefore, you'll still find the same content in the same places. The problem is that you'll see more of these shows eventually added to Netflix. It would have taken much longer for them to appear on Netflix, or in some cases, like Game of Thrones. I don't think they would have appeared on Netflix if Netflix hadn't acquired Warner Brothers. So, when we get to the episodes of Night of the Seven Kingdoms in January, when the video production is complete, they'll be on HBO Max, and the third season of House of the Dragon will remain on HBO Max. As I mentioned, the actual acquisition won't be finalized until the end of next year, when they complete the spin-off of all traditional TV channels into a completely separate company. Then, around early 2027, you'll hear about people being laid off if they have duplicate roles at both companies. It's like you're doing the same thing. One of you gets laid off. So, a lot of people will definitely be laid off in this big move. But you won't hear much about that kind of thing until around early 2027. So, at least for the next couple of years, you won't notice much of a difference. Just a few unusual extras being added to Netflix, which are already available on HBO Max. So, if you're already paying for HBO Max, nothing will change. And if you're already paying for Netflix, nothing will really change. You'll just get a little extra content. Over time, they'll probably try to bundle the apps so you can get both globally for a lower price. But the most important thing is that they're not getting rid of HBO Max or trying to completely merge HBO Max with Netflix. That was a bit of a surprise. I thought they were just going to try and accommodate HBO Max, which they don't seem to be doing. Most of the questions they've had from people, and most of Ted Sandos's, the CEO of Netflix, talk has been about what's happening with Warner Brothers movies like Superman 2, Man of Tomorrow, Supergirl, Clayface, Batman 2, and all the other big projects they're working on. People have been saying, wait a minute, is this movie still going to be in theaters? Are you still trying to kill theaters? What he's basically said is that they haven't changed anything about how Warner Brothers releases movies. So, all the movies they've already made or are planning to make, like James Gunn's DC Universe, will still be released in theaters the way they originally were going to be, in regular movie windows. Then they'll eventually be released on HBO Max. Then they'll eventually be released on Netflix, maybe a little faster on Netflix. But Netflix is also not changing how it works with its original movies or original TV series. Stranger Things is a good example. They're not going to suddenly change how they release Stranger Things films, or how they release Netflix originals like Frankenstein or Knives Out, Wake Up Dead Man. These films are still in theaters for about a week, and then they're released on Netflix much more quickly. This simply means that Netflix is announcing that the way the two companies operate will not change. The next big question. People are asking what will happen to James Gunn's DC universe. Well, Netflix has said it won't interfere with any of his plans. So, James Gunn and Peter Safran will remain at the helm of the DC Extended Universe. They won't change their vision for what DC's first chapter will look like. The movies and TV shows they've been planning to produce will all continue to be the same. Netflix won't interfere with what they're producing. They won't tell them, you have to release Batman, the Brave and the Bold next year or else. They'll do what they want, and Netflix will let them. Many have wondered over the past 2 years, what if Netflix buys DC? Will they bring back the Snyder era? Will Zack Snyder return? That's not going to happen either. James Gunn and Zack Snyder are already good friends. And James Gunn has stated that he'd love to work with Zack Snyder at DC. So, it's pretty much an open-door policy. So, if Zack Snyder ever wants to work on a DC project, whether it's a movie or a TV series, James Gunn would be happy to hear about it. There are a lot of things I think would be better for Zack Snyder's URA, like the Ultimate Universe he could work on in another world. Generally speaking, mergers of large companies like this are usually bad in the long run. For example, the merger isn't a good thing in the long run, but it's less bad than it could have been. It could have been much worse. Share your reactions in the comments below. I'm sure there will be a billion questions about this in the next 2 years. I'll try to answer everything in the comments. We have a good idea of what it looks like right now. Remember, we're still in the early stages, so it will take a couple of years before you start to notice the difference. What you will really notice is that there will be more Warner Brothers content on Netflix than there used to be. That will be the only change. For the most part, I'm glad to hear that they're still releasing all the big movies in theaters the usual way. This was what worried most people. And although James Gunn and George R.R. Martin, those big stars, weren't part of it. From the deal itself. James Gunn posted recently, and I think he was trying to let everyone know he had a good feeling that everything would be okay in the long run. Overall, he didn't seem worried about this big deal. Currently, all the major studios are releasing some huge movies. We're supposed to get the first teaser for Avengers, Doomsday next week. We're also supposed to get a new teaser for Supergirl next week, as well as a teaser for Season 5 of The Boy. I'll be making videos of all the big teasers that come out, so make sure you turn on notifications on my channel so you don't miss anything. Thanks so much for watching, and see you in the next episode.
Get my lawyer!